Hello there and welcome to your Winchester News Online briefing. I'm Lennie Teague, I'm joined by Elliot Norton and Mary Furlong. In the latest, Winchester City lost a local derby 2-0 to Sholing. Energy bills are set for another dramatic change, but the biggest change of them all has come on the international front. Mary Furlong is here to explain one of Donald Trump's craziest decisions.
Yes. Over in the United States, President Donald Trump has officially renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. The Gulf of Mexico was first named in the 1540s, and after not even a month into his presidency, he has changed geography. He flew over the Gulf of Mexico on February 9th to officially change the name. Many people are not very happy with this decision, obviously, but Google as well as Apple Maps have already officially changed the name on their websites and on their apps.
Oh, interesting. Do you know exactly why this change? I mean, of all the things for a brand new president to do, this seems kind of outlandish.
No, it is. Honestly, it's very extra. On the day of his inauguration, he announced that he would be changing, and many people took it as a joke because of the randomness of this decision. But on February 9th, he had finally made the decision and officially sworn it in. So now school systems are changing. They will now be teaching kids about the Gulf of America instead of the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, so will that include the history of the Gulf of Mexico? So when they're teaching kids this, would it be like, oh, there's the history of the Gulf of Mexico and then the history of the Gulf of America? Is that kind of how it works? Or is it literally just everything to do with the Gulf of Mexico is completely eroded, Gulf of America, that's it?
Honestly, I'm not 100% positive, but growing up, we didn't learn about the history of the Gulf of Mexico. We were just told its name. So, and where it is. So all I can assume is that maps will be reprinted, globes will be reprinted, all of that, and they will just refer to it as the Gulf of America. There might be a grandfather age where they'll be it used to be called the Gulf of Mexico, but now it's the Gulf of America. But I feel like eventually they will just switch completely.
Okay, so that wasn't mentioned at all in the Project 2025 stuff when he was running for presidency? You say he announced it? He announced it
at his inauguration. So the day he was sworn in as president, that's when he was like, I will be changing the name. It's random. It's a very random.
That's really random. Lennie, I don't think anything in the UK is ever, I don't think anything ever, any other country has happened anything like that.
No, I mean, the only thing I can think of is the British Empire. I was going to ask, obviously Trump wants to purchase Greenland as well, doesn't he?
Yes.
Is this sort of a sign of American imperialism, him wanting to take over various parts of the world?
Well, here's the thing. Trump throughout his presidency, as well as his when he was the president, constantly talked about making America great again or reclaiming Americans' fallen things. But he has, and with his new election, I think after his first 4 years as president, he didn't complete everything he wanted to. And so when he was reelected, now he's automatically making these randomness of changes and things that don't really impact anybody besides, actually no one. It doesn't impact anyone by changing the name but purchasing Greenland would, but he really doesn't have the capability of doing that stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like he's going at it in a way which is like, oh, I want this to be how he's not looking out for the people that voted for him. He's almost going at it of a way that it's like, I want this, I'm going to have this. Especially as well because he's come out and said he also wants Canada to be the was it the 52nd? Was it 53rd?
The 51st state.
51st state. So yeah, there's all of these kind of changes which,
personally, how I have viewed it is the fact that a lot of Trump's decisions are based off his ego. He just wants more. He wants the credit for things. And even after he lost the 2020 election, he still wouldn't accept the fact because of his ego and just everything. So I think changing the name is a part of his ego of making America great in his way.
I mean, you say as well, he had 4 years to do it from 2016 to 2020. Didn't obviously accept the loss. He's now got 4 years, as obviously US presidents have a maximum of 8 years a term before, you are out of office. Yep. He's got 4 years to implement these changes. We could see quite a lot of these kind of drastic changes being brought in quite a short space of time. I mean, you've got Elon Musk, who's his right hand man as well, and he's out there saying, "Oh, we're going to expand this almost to Europe." Like they're talking about the mega movement, the make Europe great again. So these changes, they're not going to just stay America centralized. They're already branching out. Yeah,
and it's the fact that he's only been a month into his presidency and things have already taken like such a drastic turn. There's been so many like moments of like just him making decisions or like taking over Europe, taking over Canada that he's mentioned that don't feel necessary to like the actual improvement of America.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting, frankly quite worrying, to be honest.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, getting a bit more local. Obviously, I mentioned at the start about the energy bills set for another rise in April. So the regulator for electricity and gas prices, Ofgem, has revealed that their new cap will see an increase of 6.4%, which is higher than the 5% that was initially forecast by analysts. That's going to mean there's a rise of £111 in yearly costs, bringing the total to £1,849 for a calendar year. While that means monthly payments will be risen by £9.25. Frankly, I think this is quite worrying for homeowners and renters. Anyone who has to pay these kind of bills. It's another dramatic increase, and especially one that's higher than what was originally predicted. It's quite worrying. I mean, what are your two thoughts on that?
Especially when do you think like coming to like college or university students, especially this increase?
Yeah, I think it's going to affect everyone. The Ofgem have said that you can have a fixed tariff and avoid these rises by joining a gas and electric service provider, but that's not much of an answer. I mean, they said that, but then they also said that there's a prediction for the prices to fall again in July. So it's almost a kind of, well, you can do this, but this is going to happen, or this might happen, which again is worrying really, because if that's just a prediction, there was a prediction for prices to only rise by 5%, but now they've risen by 6.4%. These predictions can't exactly be accurate. So although there is this possibility for you to avoid these costs, especially as someone like a student or an elderly person, someone who might struggle more to cover these kind of costs, while that possibility is there, it's not exactly good for you. It's almost like there's a kind of guilt trip there, where they're trying to convince you not to switch over, kind of thing.
It does put people in quite a difficult position. I mean, obviously, with that increase, people are already struggling to pay bills, with cost of living increasing all the time. We're not seeing salaries increase by nearly as much as the cost of living is. So it's already putting people, especially in vulnerable positions, in a squeeze. And as well, you mentioned the renters, like people that rent, especially students. Well, they're renting from landlords, and these landlords will have to obviously own that property, and they're obviously going to be owning several properties. Yeah. But they're all going to be having to then deal with that themselves, and in doing so, it could push the rent up, the rent costs, and that's going to impact. It's going to be like a trickle down effect, and it's going to end up affecting everyone, as you say, Lennie. But I think it does seriously risk putting like students and people in vulnerable positions in terms of outside of education and living in a really tight spot of what do you almost prioritize? We've had people that have not been able to pay their electricity and just been living in complete darkness and cold conditions, especially during the winter.
I mean, most people are living like paycheck to paycheck, so even like this slight increase could change their whole dynamic of how they're paying for everything, and to the point where they won't be able to afford everything.
Yeah, I mean, Elliot, you made an interesting point about the cost of living crisis and it being ongoing, and we're not seeing as much of a rise in salaries of people, and obviously, Mary, like you say, people are being forced to live from paycheck to paycheck. It's actually quite interesting because Ofgem confirms why this cap is why this significant rise is happening, and it's because of global wholesale prices for energy. They're constantly rising, so it's kind of like we're sharing the cost of that. But where does that come into the cost of living crisis and the salary? Whereas, okay, yeah, getting hold of electricity and gas. I don't know why that sounds very silly to say, getting hold of electricity and gas, but getting hold of that is so much more expensive, so we have to pay more for that, but yet we're still forced to live on the same amount of money we're earning before that rise came in. I mean, what are your two thoughts on that? Like, where does it end, kind of thing?
Well, I mean, speaking from, obviously, I have the advantage of Mary here. I've grown up, me and you have grown up in the UK. We've had, obviously, our families have grown up, so we have like more experience with it, I guess. But it's naturally, and it's really a tough position to be in, because, as Mary said, imagine being in a position where you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're trying desperately to make ends meet, and then all of a sudden, they just come in and they're like, oh, by the way, it's going to get even worse.
Yep.
And there's nothing that we're going to do. We're going to this scheme that they're saying, oh, you can do this and it will maybe help you, but then it's going to change again. It's like they're dangling like a false carrot in front of you. They're like, oh, but it might get better. It might get better. Oh no, it's actually got worse. Yep. And it will just be a constant. And it has been. It's with this cost of living crisis. It's just been getting worse and worse and worse, with no real benefits for the working people of the UK. There's nothing. There's no silver lining anywhere that I can see. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just like a downward spiral that it doesn't seem to be a way out of.
It also, like, at least of what I have known, no one's really trying to fix it either. Or at least you could correct me, but it's just continuing, as you said. Like, it's a downward spiral. No one's trying to fix it. No one's trying to heal the increase in this.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I mean, Ofgem's a government, same as any other regulator is. Ofcom is a member of the government, and I never seem to hear of anything happening. I mean, there's always plans in place as part of, say, manifestos and the budget and things like that, but I never seem to actually see or hear any action being taken. Like you say, Mary, there's not actually any real effect to heal it, and it's gonna continue to trouble people as this rise in costs has shown. Again, Elliot, like you said, I wouldn't call it a scheme per se, but it does almost feel that way. The fact that they are telling you can join a fixed tariff and have set prices. But then it might get better still. It's just a guessing game, kind of like you could do it and it could be okay for you, but you can't do it, you might not do it, and you might regret it.
Yeah, I think it's going to put people in already tricky situations into it. It's going to give them something extra to worry about, something they added to their plate, which they really didn't need. And I don't know what the situation is in terms of other countries. Obviously, you're from the US, Mary, but I don't feel, as you say, there's nothing that seems to be going on to fix it, but there doesn't seem to be much aid to those that are already struggling. It's not like they've come out and gone, oh, by the way, but we are going to help. If you're struggling to pay these costs, there's something that plan, obviously. But as you say, it's a risk. It's a guessing game for us, and it feels like we've been, and many people will feel a similar way, they've been stung by stuff like this before, where a plan's come in and it's gone, oh, well, if you do this, it will work out in the long run. And they've done it, and it's actually either not benefited them at all or actually made it worse. But then, and it puts you into that kind of twisted mindset of like, oh, do I, don't I? And again, it's just that added kind of pressure or decision that these people really don't need, and they don't want at that moment. They just want calm, and it's not happening.
Anyway, we're running out of time, so we'll move on to a bit of a happier subject. Elliot, you were at the game on Saturday. Winchester City lost 2-0 to Sholing.
Well,
little local derby.
Trying to figure out how you make that happy for our Winchester listeners.
Well, sport is
True.
maybe a happier subject. The Winchester fans not so much, but little derby on the south coast. How did that one pan out?
Well, it was an interesting game. For a derby, it was actually quite relaxed. There wasn't really any kind of crunch tackles or moments. There was, the occasional push and shove, but no serious misconduct, no red cards, a couple of yellow cards just for, simple small fouls. But no, ended up being 2-0 to the visitors Sholing. They scored in the 30-odd minute in the first half, and then late on in the second half, 78th minute. That one was from a free kick. So, yeah, it was... Winchester had chances, I'll give them that. They just couldn't really find the finishing touch. They created a lot. They asked a lot of questions, but in the end there was no end product. And obviously it's contributed to the loss. That's now 5 games straight without a win. They've lost or drawn for the last 5 games. Their last win was at home to, I believe, who was it to? It was so long ago I can't even remember. But no, the point is that they're struggling. They really are, because they've now dropped to 17th in the league table. Teams around them have won. Teams around them have also got games in hand on them. So if those teams win those games that they haven't played yet, Winchester could fall even further. Which is obviously not what our listeners will want to hear. Yeah, they're struggling with it.
I mean, obviously it's a 22-team league. Winchester are 17th. The bottom 4 get relegated. Is there a fear that they are gonna go down, or do you think they'll survive the drop?
I've spoken to fans at the game, and obviously they were disappointed with the result. As you would almost hope them to be. But the fact of the matter is, they were playing a very good side. Sholing are a good team. They're currently mid-table. I believe they're sat 9th in the league. Obviously, Winchester now down in 17th. Teams around them, around Winchester, they're on several points less. So Winchester sit on 33 points. The teams in the bottom 4 sit on 29 for the 3 of them, and Marlow last on 20. Winchester sit on 33, as I say. They have got a bit of a buffer. But again, as I say, these teams below them have played either 1 or 2 less matches. So if they win those games, that's 6 points a swing. And all of a sudden, Winchester are in a really tricky position. So I wouldn't say there's almost a panic or a fear at the moment. But if Winchester do not turn this form around, then yeah, there's going to be some fear creaking in. In fact, they play this Saturday. They travel away to Havant and Waterlooville, who currently sit 6th, so just outside the playoff places. So top 5, obviously first gets automatic promotion into the next league. 2nd to 5th play out, as I'm sure Lennie knows from being a Walton and Hersham fan, as they sit in 4th. Obviously this is going to be a tough game. Havant and Waterlooville, good team. They're pushing to try and get into that promotional places. They're at home, so Winchester again. That's another struggle for that. They're going to have to, they haven't got the home crowd behind them. Yeah, these final couple of months, these next couple of games could determine the fate of Winchester's season, for better or for worse.
May I ask, how good of the team were they last year? Were they around the same, or were they better?
Last year they had a bit of an up and down season.
Okay.
They weren't great, but they weren't terrible. So it seems they always kind of bobble, kind of bounce around. But this season
they've just been the last 5 games they haven't won.
Yeah. So the last 5 games, if I whittle off some results, after winning, it was Swindon Supermarine. They won 1-0 at home on the 25th of January. So that's the last time they won, January, and we're end of Feb. That's that highlights just
Yeah.
how much they have struggled. They lost to Walton and Hersham, obviously playoff chasing team, 4-2. I was at that game. Manager said it was a disappointing result, but the performance was there. And he was hoping to see, he said, and I quoting him on this, if I see the same level of performance every week from now until the end of the season, he'll be happy, because he felt that the performance they put in didn't.
They just got unlucky with the scores. What he's saying?
So he thought that the score was particularly flattering towards Walton and Hersham. It's 4-2. It was 2-2.
Gotcha.
Winchester came from 2-0 down. It was 2-2, and then late on they conceded 2.
Okay.
But it was a much closer game than the score shows. But then after that, they drew 1-1 with Hamilton. Again, I was at that game. That was very close. In fact, that was Winchester went behind, and they've struggled with that a lot this year. They've really struggled defensively. They've conceded a lot of goals, and unfortunately, they haven't had the goals themselves to claw them back.
They haven't.
They did in this instance. Tommy Wright with a 93rd minute equaliser, and that was pandemonium. Fans going crazy, throwing beer everywhere. It was great, great to watch. But at the same time, it's another couple of points dropped. It's another game without a win.
Yeah,
and it just adds to the situation that they're in of being in 17th.
I'm just gonna ask you to wrap it up, Elliot. We have hit our mark. I suppose you may have answered this, but in just a few words, how would you summarise this result? How much is going to affect Winchester's season?
It's disappointing. I think it is. It's a derby. Teams should always show up for a derby. They're at home. In terms of the season, if they don't turn it around soon, it will only get worse. Yeah, they could be facing the drop, which would be a real shame.
Okay, thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Mary. I've been Lennie Teague with your Winchester News Online briefing. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.